Good morning, Boker Tov, and welcome to our Parsha class, the Parsha of Ki Sisa. The good Chumash on page 554. Parsha of Ki Sisa. And today's Parsha class is dedicated to actually quite some people. People will start with the Dan Fertel's parents, whose yard site was or is this week. Their names are Sidney Fertel, Shmuel ben Baruch Halevi, and Joyce Fertel is Yosefet Bat Elazar, and also his grandmother, Beatrice Cohen, which is Beatrice Bat David HaKohen. So today's class is dedicated in their memory, and as well, it's also dedicated in memory of Lance Turkish's aunt, mother's sister, who passed away this week. Louis Tarshish, Lois Tarshish, the Hebrew name was Leah Sarah Bas David. And so this is dedicated by Karen and Lance Turkish and Rosalind Turkish in memory of Lois. And may their neshama have an aliyah. May our study today, this morning, study of the Parsha, be in their memory. Okay, so morning. Today's Parsha, the Parsha of Ki Sisa, is it's a heavy Parsha. To be honest, it's a heavy Parsha. It's a loaded Parsha. It's a lot in this Parsha. There's the beginning and the end. We kind of change gears a little bit. We're coming from a very high point in the Jewish history. We're coming off the Exodus of Egypt, the great miracles, the wonders that God has done for us when we left Egypt, the splitting of the sea, receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai. We spent 2 weeks talking about building the Mishkan, the special sanctuary, the special tabernacle, the home, an abode for God, going into great details. Hashem talks about V'shochanti b'soicham, I will dwell amongst you. How we can have an opportunity to serve God, to relate to God, to connect with God through and via this home, the Mishkan. The inauguration of the Mishkan. We're on a high. It's great. It's heaven on earth. And in this week's Parsha, that takes a total turn. And we have a very low, perhaps the lowest point in Jewish history in this week's Parsha, the sin of the golden calf, where the Jewish people go from the highest point to the lowest point. Taking out of Egypt, receiving the Torah, to committing idolatry, to serving idols, golden calf, 40 days after the giving of the Torah, unheard of. That's all in this week's Parsha. So we're going to go kind of give a little overview of the Parsha. The beginning of the Parsha is also a little bit of different ideas. And then we'll try to analyze one verse or two verses of Moshe's response to God as a response to the sin of the golden calf. Moshe comes out to be here something unique, something special. His dedication and loyalty to the Jewish people is second to none. It's unheard of. And I think there's a powerful lesson we could take from this in our lives as well. So here we go. The opening of the Parsha, the beginning of the Parsha, starts off with the special mitzvah of the half shekel, where each and every Jew had to give a half shekel. It was a form of counting, but more than that, it was also a form of atonement when they gave this half shekel. And there were various times that the Jewish people had to give a half shekel. There was a one-time fund for the half shekel that they used they use it for the sockets, like the foundation of the walls of the Mishkan. But then there was this concept that where every year there was an annual fund, an annual drive that went on for hundreds of years. Even when the Jewish people went into Israel, every year before Passover, before Pesach time, they would collect a half a shekel from every person, and that was used for the communal fund for the communal sacrifices, the offerings that were brought daily, weekly, on holidays. They were bringing communal offerings, and who paid for it? The community had to pay for it. So how did the community pay for it? Through this drive where every person had to give a half a shekel. And I believe last year we analyzed this in greater depth. What is the significance of the half a shekel when no one gave more, no one gave less? There was the idea of unity that was involved in giving this half a shekel. So that is the opening of the Parsha. The Parsha also talks about the last vessel in the Mishkan that was not mentioned till now is the urn, the water, the washing basin, where they used to wash their hands at the beginning of the service, which, by the way, till today we have this idea that before we serve God, before we pray, we're supposed to wash our hands, and that's why we have faucets, we have sinks in the shul. In fact, it's an interesting, sitting with the architect, talking about some plans for our building expansion. Right, we have grand plans. So one of the things I mentioned to him is that we need to have some sinks in the back of the shul. And he's like, "What? Like, what's this for? You have the bathrooms, you have a washing station over there. You want a coffee station, a coffee counter. You have a sink over there. Why do you need this in the shul?" I said, "Yeah, because we ask before we go to daven, we all wash our hands. So it's important to have that access." So that is in this week's parsha. We have the special oil that was used to anoint the Kohens and anoint the Mishkan in general as a part of the inauguration. We also have, which we also mentioned last time, I believe, the special service with the incense, the spices that were burnt on the inner altar, and the beautiful aroma that it made. So in this week's parsha, we have more details of exactly how which spices to use, the special 11 spices that were taken that we have in this week's parsha as well. We also have the appointing the two architects, the contractors who are the ones to build the Mishkan. We have the observance of Shabbos, and here we have page 562, the beginning of the story of the sin of the golden calf. So the sin of the golden calf, in short, what happened? Moshe goes onto the mountain during the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. The message that the Jewish people got was that Moshe is going on the mountain for how many days? 40 days. 40 days. For 40 days, they have not seen Moshe, a human being, a man of flesh and blood, goes onto a mountain for 40 days. No food, no drink. They understand that this is miraculous. They understand that this is divine. This is not something that they could ever explain. Moses is like an angel for 40 days. Comes 40 days. They are eagerly anticipating Moshe's return. You told us you're coming back in 40 days. We can't live without you. They loved Moshe to pieces. They loved him dearly. They wanted him to return. Teach us what you heard up high for 40 days. There must be so much we can learn. Moshe doesn't arrive. Moshe does not arrive. And so, without even waiting an extra day, they first go to his brother Aaron, and they say, "Aaron, what's going on over here? Moshe hasn't returned. We need something." And Aaron already smelled this problem. He smelled trouble. Something's cooking over here. And he felt that he may lose control. He does not have the ability to stop this. So the best thing that he could do in his mind was to delay it. Delay it in a way where hopefully the time they do anything severe, Moshe will return. So first he says, go bring all your jewelry, but not just all your jewelry, the jewelry that you're wearing, the jewelry that your wives are wearing. And he's thinking, you know that what that means. That's going to take a long time for them to convince their wives to give up their jewelry. I'm buying some time over here. But unfortunately, they were quick, and in a very short time, they all brought all their jewelry, and they build this altar. And Aaron says, okay, tomorrow we're going to celebrate. Tomorrow we're going to celebrate. Unfortunately, they wake up early in the morning and they start offering. They start offering these bringing sacrifices on this altar, and they start to have a total wild party. And there is this. They throw all this silver, the gold into this fire, and there's this egel, there's this golden calf that emerges from the fire, and that's it. They start dancing around the golden calf, totally, completely serving idols, an idol, golden idol, right after 40 days after they heard from God's voice on Mount Sinai. You should not have any other gods, not serve any other gods. A terrible time, seemingly, for a low point in the Jewish people. Moses is still on the mountain. By the way, what happened? Why was Moses late? Moses was just late. Moses was running late. I'm sorry. I was supposed to be back yesterday, but I missed my flight. I got tripped. I got stuck on a piece of bubble gum. Right? I mean, what happened exactly? Where was Moshe? The truth is that Moshe was exactly on time. The Jewish people made a mistake in their calculation, because when Moshe said 40 days, what he meant is 40 complete days. So if I'm going up today, starting from tomorrow morning, because today's not a complete day. So he meant 40 complete days. And they counted the day that he went up as day number one, instead of counting it from the following day. So Moshe was exactly on time, but in their calculations, he was late. Moshe came on the 41st day on their calculation, but really it was the 40th day originally, according to Moshe's understanding. So it was a miscalculation. Calculation. Unfortunately, this miscalculation caused one of the gravest sins. While Moshe is still on the mountain, God already tells him, listen, you don't know what happened down there. It's awful. It's terrible. Go down. And God uses the term lech reid, go down in a way where it kind of demoted his own prestige. Moshe himself was already affected, even though he had nothing to do with this. But the fact that the Jewish people already sinned already meant that there's already a blemish, so to say, on Moses himself. He says, go down. Your nation has destroyed, had become corrupt. And right away, God says, I already have an idea. Let me destroy this nation. I'll wipe them out. We're done. We tried, it didn't work. How could they do this? I'll destroy this nation, and I will make a new nation from you. Your descendants will start fresh. We'll start over. Almost like the story of the flood. Didn't work. We got to have Jewish people 2.0. And right away, Moshe's instinct, his initial response, without even going down and asking questions and finding out what happened, right away, Moshe starts to pray on behalf of the Jewish people. And he says, God, why? Why are you so upset? And he says, remember what you did to Abraham, or remember Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Remember Abraham, who was willing to be thrown into a furnace, into the fire for you. Remember Isaac, who was willing to be slaughtered as a sacrifice for you. Remember Jacob, who went into exile for you. Remember these. These are 3 pillars. You know what he said? Interesting. Rashi says, he told him, a table needs how many feet, minimum feet to stand? It needs 3. If it can't stand on these 3 feet, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you want it to stand on 1 foot just for me? Just a new nation for me? We have these 3 great pillars, 3 great feet of the table. That should be strong enough. And in fact, these few verses that I just paraphrased are such powerful verses, prayers that Moshe prays on behalf of the Jewish people, that every time we have a fast day on the Jewish calendar, And there's a special Torah reading that we read on the fast day, on the fast of Esther, on Tisha B'Av, on the 17th of Tammuz, on Tzom Gedalia, not Yom Kippur, but the other five fasts, 10th of Teves. We actually read these verses. It's verses beseeching God when we are trying to understand that we have done something wrong, and nevertheless God should forgive us. We read these verses, powerful, powerful verses. So right away, God already steps back. Okay, so he's not going to destroy the Jewish people. But Moshe has to go down. He has to take care of business. So after the short prayer, Moshe descends from the mountain and he comes to the camp where the Jewish people are. At this point, Moses is holding the tablets, the Luchot, the tablets that were written by God's hand. There isn't anything more precious. It's the most precious thing. You go to an antique shop, you see this is 500 years old. It's worth whatever, $40,000. This table is worth is 1,200 years old. Whatever, they charge $100,000. This thing is whatever, 3,000 years old. Nothing as valuable as the Luchot itself, written by God. I mean, it was miraculous. And he's holding it. And he comes down the mountain, and the person he meets is his student, Yehoshua, who never left the mountain. He wasn't there for 40 days. He pitched his tent right at the foot of the mountain, and he wasn't involved in anything that was going on. He was there waiting for his teacher, Moshe, to return. And he says, Yehoshua, I'm hearing voices, I'm hearing sound. It doesn't sound good. They come to the camp and they see exactly what happened. They see them dancing around the golden calf. Moshe suddenly feels the luchot, these tablets become so heavy. They become so heavy, and he gets angry and he throws it, and he breaks the luchot on the floor. You know, they say that a person who is alive weighs less than a dead person, a dead body. The life, the soul, the energy, the life of a person kind of carries itself. So physically, a dead person weighs more than an alive person, even if they're sleeping, right? Because an alive person carries himself. They say the same was true with the luchos. While it was alive, when they had like God's spirit in it, Moshe was able to hold it. But suddenly, it felt dead. It felt lifeless, and it was suddenly so heavy. And Moshe not dropped it, but threw it. And there's, I think we spoke in other years, the significance of that Moshe, God forbid, wasn't here just out of anger, had a temper, and just broke something so precious, but really was doing this to deliberately to save the Jewish people. Is actually on sync with his prayer on behalf of the Jewish people. Also, the idea of breaking the law. Moshe comes, he takes the egel, he takes the golden calf, he destroys it, he burns it, he grinds it, and he gets rid of this, and he tells the Jewish people, what's going on over here? He turns to his brother Aaron, what happened over here? Aaron tried to say exactly what happened. We tried, with this, with that. Basically, the story is Moshe realizes there are some people that deserve to die. That was their atonement. That was their only way out for their soul, and therefore capital punishment was performed right over there. Many people were killed at that point, and right away Moshe returns to God. Moshe returns to God. He has done what he has to do down there. Now I need to go back to God. I need to speak to God again. And here's where I want to read inside. We're on page 570, 571. We'll start from verse 30. Verse 30. If you have a different chumash, we're talking about chapter 32, verse 30. Right? So Moshe already had his initial prayer to God on the mountain. He comes down from the mountain. He takes care of business down below. And now he returns to God to continue praying on behalf of the Jewish people. Let's read verse 30. Vayihi mimochoros. And it was on the next day. In general, Moshe always ascended the mountain in the morning. Vayoba Moshe el ha'am, atem chatosem chata'o gedolah. Moshe tells the Jewish people, you have committed a terrible sin. However, ve'ata, and now, e'ele el Hashem, I'm going to go up, I'm going to return to God. Ulai achapra ba'ad chataschem, perhaps I will obtain atonement for your sin. Meaning, what you have done is terrible sin. Now, many people who have actually sinned were already killed. But the Jewish people as a whole have sinned. And we'll see that later there was another plague that many more people died. But still, there are many people who did not die, and they had this terrible sin. And Moshe says, I'm going up the mountain, I'm going to do my best. I'm here for you. I am going to pray and try to see if I could obtain an atonement for you. Verse 31. Vayashav Moshe el Hashem. Moshe returns to God. Vayomar, and he says, he begins his prayer. What's his prayer? Oh no. He starts with please. There's so much we can learn from each word of Moshe's prayer. Oh no, please. I know. I'm not oblivious. I know that the people have committed a terrible sin. Vayasu lahem elokei zahav, and they have made for themselves a god of gold. So let's be on the same page over here. I know that the Jewish people have sinned. They made a golden calf. Now, by the way, there's some of the commentators right over here, they throw in, they ask, why does Moshe have to elaborate on what the sin was? The Jewish people have sinned. It's like, let me tell you about their sin. They made a god out of gold. I mean, why? If anything, it's just like bringing out the worst of the Jewish people that they have sinned. Let me tell you what the sin was. We know what the sin we're talking about. Why did he have to mention it? Why did he have to emphasize that the sin, what the sin was, and that it was a sin that had to do with a god of gold? So one of the explanations given, and the Rashi is, Moshe was already kind of throwing in an argument for the Jewish people that they're not fully to blame, because you put them in a difficult situation. You put them in, it was a challenge. You gave them so much gold. You gave them so much gold when they left Egypt. What do you expect? Do you expect that they shouldn't use it for the wrong reasons? Of course, we're not saying that you can't blame them. We have free choice. We should use it properly. But at the end of the day, it was almost like a setup. Moshe was trying to hint to God. It says, you gave them so much gold, so they used it for the wrong reasons. Maybe they shouldn't have had so much gold. So already he was hinting to that when he mentioned the God of gold. Verse 32. And this is a very, very powerful verse. Now, Moshe says, God, listen up to me. If you forgive your sin, then all is good. If you forgive the Jewish people, we're on good terms. V'im ayin, but if not, if you don't forgive them, mecheni na misifrecha asher kasavta. If not, erase me from your sefer, from your book, which you have written. That's it. This is the prayer. 2 verses. One verse is, I know that the Jewish people have sinned. The second verse is, now, what am I going to do about it? You got to forgive them. If you don't forgive them, erase me from your book. And then Moshe, and then God responds to that. What's God's response? But Yom Hashem el Moshe, verse 33, God says to Moshe, Mi asher chatali emchenu misiv. I will erase from my book the one who has sinned. You, Moshe, you didn't sin. I'm paraphrasing, but like what it seems to say is, Moshe, you did not sin. I have no reason to erase you from my book. The Jewish people have sinned. Whoever has sinned, they will be erased from my book. This is the conversation. And then God continues to talk to him about that we're gonna step it down a little bit. I'm not going to be amongst the Jewish people as it was before. I'm sending my angel instead of me, etc., etc. And eventually, God did forgive the Jewish people. What exactly is this conversation? There must be more to this dialogue. Moshe says, erase me from the book. And God says, I'm not going to erase you, but I'm going to erase those who have sinned. What's this idea of, what book are we talking about? What's the idea of erasing me from the book? What's going on over here? Certain verses in the Torah, like they're calling out for more explanation. There must be more to the basic explanation, to the basic translation of these words. So let's start with the book. What book are we talking about? So we'll give two interpretations. One of them is from Nachmanides, the Ramban, Nachmanides, one of the leading commentators on the Torah. And the other one is from Rashi, which we know that Rashi obviously is the leading commentator on the Torah. And he also gives a interesting comment here as well, and we'll kind of try to elaborate Rashi's comment. But first, we'll start with Nachmanides. Nachmanides says that the book that we are referring to is not the Torah. I see the translation here, they follow Rashi. Well, let's start with Nachmanides. He talks about the book that we mentioned on Rosh Hashanah. We're all in synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, and we're talking about, we ask God, write us into the book of life. What's this book of life? So it's like a reference to this book that God has opened in the heavenly court. And in this book, we decide who will live, who will die, who will have, be punished this year, who won't be, whatever. All our destiny is written in this book. And that's the book that Moshe was talking about. In other words, Moshe was saying something very powerful. Moshe was saying like this: I'm a leader of the Jewish people. These are my people. I'm a shepherd. These are my flock. I take responsibility to what happens. If you're going to punish them, take me out of the book of life, meaning I want to be punished with them. It reminds me of the incident that happened during the Entebbe raid, right? Or before the Entebbe raid, right? When it was the Somalians, when they hijacked the plane that was going to Israel, and they took them hostage in Entebbe was the name of the airport, right? The name the city was no. Anyways, so they were going through. Basically, they only took the Israelis, the people who were Jewish or Israelis, and they let the non-Jewish or non-Israelis passengers to go free. But also initially, they were going to let the crew, the pilots, stewardesses, right? The plane, the crew, they were able to leave. And
it was Uganda, Rabbi. Uganda,
of course, Uganda.
Yeah. Google him.
So the pilots were they were able to go, and they all said, I believe all of them said, we took responsibility for the plane, we took responsibility for the passengers, we're going in with them, and they remained hostages by choice. So Nachmanides says, this is what Moshe was saying. These are my people. I'm responsible. I was in heaven. I had nothing to do with this. I'm responsible. So therefore, if you don't forgive them, which means if you're punishing them, punish me as well. Erase me from the book of life. This book that you have open in front of you on Rosh Hashanah. That book, the book of life, I don't want to be in there. I want to be punished with my people. That is what Moshe was saying. And God says, no, Moshe, no reason to do this. Those who have sinned, they will be erased from this book. They will be punished, but not you. This is what Nachmanides says is based on a midrash, actually. That's one interpretation. That's one way of understanding it. But as we know, there are 70 faces to the Torah. I mean, there are 70 ways to explain everything in the Torah. Not one is right, one is wrong. There are many, it's multifaceted, multi-layered. And there are many true explanations to the Torah. That is why, by the way, it's so difficult to actually translate the Torah. Because a translation is an interpretation. The Torah is multifaceted. There's numerous interpretations to one word, and they're all true, right? When God wrote a certain word or a certain verse, he had in mind numerous explanations. So, in a translation, it has to choose which one to go with. In the Good Chumash, generally, we follow Rashi's interpretation, just because we have to choose one. Rashi is the leading commentator, and Rashi generally, his rule is he follows the most basic explanation. He calls it Pshutoi Shel Mikra, the most basic, literal translation of the Torah. Anything which is more deeper idea or doesn't really fit so well in the words, he tries to find the more literal translation and interpretation. So Rashi has a different interpretation. Rashi says no, the book that we are referring to over here is the Torah, is the actual Torah. Some raise the question, well, the actual Torah wasn't written yet, it was only written later. So they say that there was another type of Torah that was written previously. But the point is, whether it's literally erasing from the Torah or figuratively, erasing from the Torah, but the book that he's referring to, erase me from the book, is the Torah. And Moshe was saying like this: if you forgive the Jewish people, then good. But if not, if you don't forgive the Jewish people, erase me from your Torah. I don't want to be mentioned in the Torah. And God says, no, those who have sinned, they'll be erased, but not you. And this really needs explanation. What is Moshe saying over here? He's like threatening God. If you don't forgive them, I don't want to be mentioned in your Torah. Rashi says that people are going to say that I wasn't worthy enough to forgive the Jewish people, to bring forgiveness. So people will say, hey, Moshe, you weren't, who were you? You weren't able to bring forgiveness. I mean, there must be more to this story, because Moshe is thinking about himself. He's threatening God. And what's the connection? What's the connection? They say in education that sometimes parents have to punish the children, right? You have to call it a consequence or a punishment, right? You do something wrong, we have to discipline. And sometimes discipline means a punishment. You lose this, you lose that, right? So a good educator told me once that it's important that the child should see a correlation, a connection between the punishment and the action, right? It shouldn't be like random. So because I colored on the wall, so therefore I'm gonna lose my toy. I mean, what's the connection between the two? Like, why? Because I did this mistake or whatever, I acted up over here, I should lose that. Like, what's the connect? The child should see a connection between the two. You could say, because you colored on the wall, now you have to clean up your mess, or you have to be more careful with your markers, so you're not going to be able to use your markers for the next thing. What the point is, the child should understand in their mind the connection between the punishment and what they have done, right? So it makes sense to them that they're losing something. Moshe is saying seemingly something very random. It's like I'm threatening. It's like almost like blackmail. Don't forgive them. Erase my name from the Torah. For what reason? So I saw something very powerful in a talk that the Rebbe gave. Moshe wasn't threatening God. This was a prayer. It was a means of trying to bring forgiveness to the Jewish people. It wasn't through blackmail. It wasn't like, God, listen up, God. If you don't forgive them, I mean, what do I have in my arsenal? Like, what do I have in my briefcase? Okay, erase me from the Torah. He was trying to beseech God. He was trying to bring out a place in God where God could forgive the Jewish people. And this was through saying, erase me from your Torah. What does this mean? So we all have a strong connection to God. And Moshe also has a very strong connection to God and to us. The Torah is referred to as Torah's Moshe, the Torah of Moshe. Moshe and the Torah are one, right? We received the Torah from who? From God, through Moshe. For us, there's no difference. We can't, it's hard for us to separate Moshe and the Torah. Moshe embodies the idea of following the Torah, and this is how we connect to God. There's no other way about it. There's no way to serve God without following God through the Torah. This is what Moshe is all about. Moshe is about teaching us the Torah. He is the epitome of a teacher. He taught us the Torah. We heard the Ten Commandments, the first two from God directly, but the rest of them through Moshe. We know the Torah through Moshe. We teach a child from the very young age, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Torah that was commanded to us through Moshe. Moshe and the Torah are one. There's no two ways about it. Moshe and the Torah are one. We, the Jewish people, have a connection to God. We're taught through Moshe. We have to follow in the Torah. We want to connect to God. There's no way to connect to God without following the Torah, right? It's like the infinite and the finite. How could a finite human being connect to the infinite God? Whatever we do is all in the world of finitude. How can we have a connection with the infinite God? The only way for us to have a connection is not by anything that we want to do on our own, but it's through following the guidance of the infinite God. The infinite God tells us, you want to have a connection with me? Do A, B, and C. Through the Torah, this is how we connect with God. If we don't follow in God's ways, if we break some of the laws of the Torah, we are breaking our connection with God. The Jewish people have sinned, the golden calf. They have broken their connection. God says, I can't have these people in it. Initially, I wanted to destroy them, wanted to punish them. Atonement? What atonement? Our connection is through following in my ways, following the path that Moshe has taught them. It's fresh in their mind. They have no excuses. How can we have a connection? We have broken our connection. We have broken the chain. And here is where Moshe comes in. Moshe says like this, listen, God, you know that the Torah is one with me. I mean, that's my life. The Torah is my life. This is what I'm for. I'm here to teach Torah. This is why you chose me as a leader to do what? To teach the Jewish people Torah. This is what I'm for. This is my entire existence. Well, listen up, God. Now the Jewish people have failed. He admits, he says, they have sinned, a terrible sin. If you don't forgive them, erase me from the Torah. It wasn't a threat, God forbid. He wasn't threatening God. He was praying. What was his prayer? His prayer is, if you don't forgive them, erase me from the Torah. In other words, I want to reveal a deeper layer of connection that I have with the Jewish people and the Jewish people have with you. It's a connection that goes beyond and deeper than the Torah. It's an intrinsic connection that the Jewish people have with you as a parent-child relationship. It's a biological connection that goes beyond the Torah, beyond our actions, beyond our choices. It's who we are. So if you don't forgive them, I mean, if you have a problem seeing past their actions, their sins, then reveal the deeper connection, the intrinsic connection that we have with you, which goes beyond the Torah. And there, from that space, from this connection, from this perspective, now you could forgive them. It's like a parent-child as well. When a child does not follow in the ways of a parent, we want to punish her. We want to, or maybe let's say this: when a student doesn't follow in the ways following the classroom rules, so they get punished. If you don't shape up, you shape out, right? You ship out, right? If you don't follow the rules, we can't have you here. But a parent will always say, yes, we have rules, we discipline, we have systems at home, but ultimately, I can't abandon you. You're my child. So when we reveal that child-parent relationship, it goes beyond the rules, and that's where the forgiveness comes from. Deepening this relationship, revealing that the relationship is deeper than what we have done and the way we have acted. So Moshe over here is not threatening God. And I read this, I was blown away with the way the Rebbe kind of turns this on its head. It's not a threat. It's part of Moshe's prayer. God, please see the Jewish people above and beyond the Sefer, the book, the Torah. See them who they are. They are your children, and therefore forgive them. And that's what the response was. The response was, Hashem answers Moshe, the one who has sinned, I will erase them from my book. He wasn't saying, oh, you're good. The one who has sinned, they're going to be punished being erased from the book. No, being erased from the book is not a punishment. That's forgiveness. Being erased from the book means I am not going to look at my book and see, hey, this person has sinned, but I'm going to erase them from the book and reveal this deeper connection that I have with them, which goes beyond the Torah, this intrinsic connection, and therefore I will forgive them for their actions. This is what Moshe was saying. And obviously, seeing Moshe in this light, we have so much more respect for Moshe, but that's not the point over here. The point is, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? How do I see another person? We say it all the time, Ahavas Yisrael, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your fellow as yourself, right? It's very easy to say, I love her. They say, there used to be a saying that you should love, or there is a saying that you should love the person that lives overseas the same way you love your neighbor. Some people say the opposite. I should love my neighbor the same way I love the person overseas. Right? It's very easy to say I love everyone. And we all have love in our heart, right? We're all good people, right? We love people. We love everyone. But sometimes we have to ask ourselves, and I'm talking for myself as well. Am I willing to give up something for another person? Moshe over here was willing to give up something major. It wasn't just, hey, this is my job. I'm getting paid for this. I got to stand up for the Jewish people. No, he was giving up the Torah. This was major. It was major because Moshe is one thing with the Torah. That is his life. And this, by the way, is also the same idea of throwing and breaking the luchot. Same idea. He's giving up something major for what? For other people. Do we do that? Are we willing to give up something, to be a little uncomfortable for another person? It's easy to love other people when it's easy, when they don't have to give up anything, when it feels good. On the contrary, it just adds to the quality of my life. I love other people. I love doing favors to others. It makes me feel good. But what about doing a favor when it doesn't make you feel good? What about doing a favor when you have to kind of break yourself? When you put yourself in a little uncomfort zone, just for another person? Are we willing to do that? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. I just want to conclude with I guess a story, an anecdote. A close friend of mine, older than me, but as parents, young parents, you think a lot about your children. You think a lot of how will they grow up, right? And we have only a limited amount of control of the destiny of our children. We try the best. We try to give them a good, solid foundation at home with whatever values and morals we want for them. In general, religiously as well. And ultimately, we hope that when they are older, they're an adult, they have a mind of their own, and ultimately they're making their own decisions, whether we like it or not. They do make their own decisions. Maybe too young, and we hope, but they will make their own decisions, and we hope that the values that we have instilled within them remain with them for life. Right? That's as parents, that's what we hope, and ultimately, you know, you got to pray. You got to pray.
Morning. How are you? How
My
was Shabbos?
grandfather, my
Getting some
grandfather used
visitors
to say,
today.
you got,
Sehr gesund. Feel good.
my grandfather used to say that you have to do all that you can do to to try to educate your children properly. But after all that, you still have to pray and cry in prayer that your children end up as you wish, right? Because ultimately, it's not up to you, right? But here's what so where am I going with this? So someone was talking to me that this was about 15, 20 years ago, that their daughter, who became a young teenager, was kind of leaving the path of Judaism. They were a strong Jewish observant family, and they were raising their children in this way. And their daughter was leaving that path, and it was heartbreaking. They were literally crying. They were sobbing. What to do? I mean, they knew that ultimately they have to let her make her own decisions. You can't force a young teenage girl. It's not going to work. It's just going to backfire. But it was very difficult, very, very difficult for them to watch it, to see it happen. And they were speaking to various educators and what to do, and it was devastating, devastating. And they decided that, and some of us may think this is obvious, but to them it wasn't obvious, because as they were going through this, it was very difficult, because you also go through many other considerations. How is this going to affect the other children in the family, et cetera, et cetera. They decided that whatever happens, they're going to shower her with love. They're always going to keep a very strong, strong bond with her, and it shouldn't be stressful around her. It should always be happy vibe, good vibes, even though inside their kishkas are turning, but there should always be good vibes. I'm gonna throw in a parenthetic comment with another, actually someone that I know, a family member whose son also kind of left the Jewish path and ended up very different. They were actually so upset and sad about it. They actually kind of broke their ties with their child, which is very sad because it didn't end well years later. But with this family, they decided that they're keeping a very, very healthy, positive, loving relationship with their daughter. And even though the daughter was not keeping Shabbat anymore, was not dressing appropriately, was not eating kosher, and it was very, very difficult for the parents to watch this happen. But they had them. She remained at home. They used to carpool her to school, even though they weren't going to school that they really approved of. But they would drive her to school. They would help her help her with school and help her in her life, even though everything that she was doing was totally antithetical to their lifestyle. But they kept that loving relationship. Years go by. She eventually goes to college. She meets Chabad in college. She gets involved, and suddenly she feels inspired to return to her Judaism. And today, she's married to a nice Jewish boy. They're raising a beautiful, beautiful Jewish observant home, happy, beautiful family with great grandparents, loving family with uncles and aunts and cousins. And the way I see it is that the parents went through such a challenge, like the challenge of Moshe. The Torah is so important to them. There's nothing more important than living a life of Torah. But they were able to see above and beyond that and see that our connection goes beyond our way of life. And the same is true not only in a religious standpoint, in general, right? We raise our children with a certain moral and certain values, and our children may not follow in that path. it's so important to teach, to educate, at the same time that we should always keep that and that connection, that deep connection, that loving connection that we have. And eventually we'll see the fruits of our labor. And this is, I think, another powerful message that we could take from the story of Moshe and the Jewish people. So I'll leave you with that. Some food for thought. But thank you for joining us this Sunday morning. I'm sorry I'm a little overtime as more than usual, but good to see you all and have a Shavua Tov. We should see you again next week.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was nice.